2 p.m. I would like to call our work session to order. Mr. Truesdale, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Daniels,
Here.
Ms. Green,
Present.
Mr. Lawson. Here. Mr. Majors, Ms. Rose,
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Bowers.
Thank you. I'd like to note that Councilman Rodriguez is excused for this evening. We are going to deviate from our agenda just a little bit as we wait for more of our potential board appointees to arrive. So we're going to begin with the work of the Budget and Finance Committee. I will defer to Vice President Green, our Budget and Finance Committee Chair.
Thank you, President Bowers. Tonight for the Budget and Finance Committee, we're going to be discussing Resolution 28 of 2023, which is a resolution ratifying the professional service agreement with NW Financial Group, LLC, to continue to provide professional financial advisory services related to the funds of the city of Harrisburg received as part of the American Rescue Plan Act and for other related purposes. Is there anyone here from the administration that will be presenting this? Or anyone here from NW Financial as well?
Did you want to speak first? He's not here yet.
NW's not here yet.
Not yet. He did just text me and say he's about 20 minutes out, but that was about 15 minutes ago.
All right,
I mean,
yes.
I can handle some of the questions, sorry.
I think it might be best for us to wait until he arrives.
He
So,
did text me about 15 minutes ago, that he was 22 minutes, so it's about 7 minutes out.
okay,
Sorry about
no worries, thank you.
That's okay. We'll move to the work of the Public Works Committee while we wait. I will defer to our Public Works Committee Chair, Councilman Lawson.
Thank you, President Bowers. So with the Public Works Committee, today we will be discussing Resolution 29-2023, a resolution ratifying an addendum to the professional services agreement with Dawood Engineering Incorporated to continue to provide services as the city engineer for the city of Harrisburg. Do we have anyone from the administration and Dawood to present today?
Yes.
Good evening. I am Wes Heisley with Dawood Engineering. I am the interim city engineer.
Good evening, Council. Dave West, Director of Public Works.
Good evening, Council. Project Manager, Percy Bullock, City of Harrisburg.
Great, thank you. What would you have for us for continuing the services of Dawood?
In light of us, our representatives of the city not able to find a suitable engineer, we're asking to continue the services from our current engineer firm in Dawood, and Wes Heisley, who's the individual who represents us from Dawood.
Thank you. And Mr. Heisley, what are your feelings here with continuing to represent us? My guess is I already know the answer, but
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Councilman Wilson. Just a little background, back in October of 2021, 21, yes, the previous engineer, Wayne Martin, vacated his office, and at that point, there was no one to take his place, no one with a license The office requires a licensed professional engineer. At that point, the city decided to go out with an RFP to ask someone to come in and perform those services on a temporary basis. We responded to that and were awarded that contract. In March of last year, we began that contract. And that is basically, it is Percy and I work hand in hand to get the work of the city engineering done. So any issue that comes up through the city side, Percy presents to me and we talk about it and figure out where to go with it. Anything that comes down through paperwork or correspondence that I see, I go to him and we discuss it and work out where to go with it. The partnership has worked out very well, in my opinion. And last year we billed $149,000 for the services of the city engineer. I think we were budgeted for 75,000 this year. But that was predicated on the new city engineer coming on board, which, as we all know, didn't happen. So at this point, I guess it's Pag, you're it, and I'm it.
Just one small correction, it's 249 was the total fees for last year.
Oh, sorry.
And then, I'm sorry.
Mr. Loss, just for terms of the legalities of it, the contract is the same as last year. It goes to December 31st of this year. The council and the budget is budgeted $150,000 for 2023. It is there. The hope still is as a placeholder. I guess we're gonna have to come to terms whether that's a realistic or unrealistic expectation, whether we're gonna be able to have an on-staff engineer. But it's also a ratification of a contract because it's already executed, because they continue to serve in this function after December 31st, because we had to have an engineer with a license to stamp what has to be stamped. So this is a ratification like two other contracts we've been doing recently are, including the NW, because the services had to go on uninterrupted at the time. So that just to give a context to what this is.
Thank you.
If I might add, nothing bad against West or Darwood. We are still searching for cities. So I just want to put that on the record.
Mr. West, you answered my next question. That's what I was going to ask, if we have had any leads or any success with finding someone to step into this role. Do we have any prospective leads at this point, or are we still in the searching phase?
I think it's probably premature to say. You know, the advertisement is out there, people can apply. I can't speak for HR for what's come through there. There's been some indication that there's been interest, but whether they've been vetted as qualified yet, you know, that has to happen internally. So, but it's still being advertised. There are inquiries, but it has to come down with a licensed qualified professional that can be licensed in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you. And what is our expectation? I know that we had budgeted 75, or maybe it was 150,000.
150,000.
That's what
Yes. for
As
the
we
year.
budgeted. What is our expectation at this point that we may be looking at in billable hours?
Yeah, I mean, well, we spent $250,000 last year, but that included the work that we did on State Street, which by itself was about 150,000. So when you take that out of the mix, there's still a little bit of work left to be done on State Street. But when you take that out of the mix, you're looking at about $100,000 worth of billings to the city. But that was from March, so that was only 3 quarters. So, 150,000 should be about right, excluding any large projects.
And is that a guesstimate that would carry us through the year, or did we figure that to like a July, or what were we looking at when we budgeted the 150?
This is typically a guesstimate because you don't know what arises. And it must be made note of, this monies for the engineering department, for engineering, services, does not just come through the engineering department. This includes the umbrella of all city departments that are in need of engineering services. So I want to make that clear. Any department that is in need of engineering services goes through Wes and I, and more so him for his response, for him and his team. So it's just not engineering department. Other departments do use the services as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I'll open this up to the rest of the council. I'll start with Councilman Rawls. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Councilman Lawson. Good evening to all three of you. Thank you for being here. I really don't have any questions. Mine were answered about money-wise, funds, things of that nature, but I do thank you for trying to fill the vacancy for us not having a city engineer. I mean, you could say no. Money isn't everything to everybody. So I just ask, moving forward, of course, continue to help us do the best by our city, love it like we do. And make sure we're just connecting with the community on what's going on, which I think we've always said, just make sure they know what's happening just as well as we do. So thank you.
My Vice President.
Thank you, Councilman. A couple of questions. So last year, the cost was 249,000, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now you said that all of this isn't just the engineering department, it's other departments that need engineering services. So I know every time we kind of come to this question, it's kind of a little here, there, and everywhere. But if we're looking at this as a whole, did the city see a cost savings or a cost increase? Because I know before you said that all of the engineering services, when we had a city engineer, weren't just provided by the city engineer. They were also provided by outside firms when needed. So did this save us money by not having to go to outside firms, or do we still have to go to outside firms along with spending 250,000?
Right off the back, I would tell you clearly we saved substantial amount of money in average over the years. Okay, I'm gonna throw a number of somewhere $500,000. Okay, in average. Okay, because we didn't have the multiple firms that were here with the previous engineer that represented the city. So it was just, we ironed it down to probably one, and we had two that was doing some minor subcontracting, and Steel Dallwood controlled that. So the 249,000 basically was taken wholly in by Dallwood. And I believe that's a substantial savings all around. They pretty much do about 80–90% of our engineering services. There's a few things on the outside they don't represent, and we have to go on the outside of that. That's it. And that's one excellent thing about having a firm like this. They can assume everything at one time.
Okay. If we could just get some numbers to show that,
Okay.
Like to show what we spent in the previous years versus what we've spent with having an engineering firm. I'd love to see that. I think we kind of asked for it before, just kind of so that we can compare and contrast for ourselves. Just because of the situation that we are in and not having a city engineer and having been searching for one for over a year. It may be time for us to look at other avenues. It might not be that we're going with Dallwood as a firm. It might be opening it up to other firms. But I think it's time for us to look at the entire totality, and without the numbers, it's hard for us to really analyze whether it's a cost savings to the city. I still would like to have a city engineer just for institutional knowledge and other things. But looking at it from a numbers perspective, I'd like to have the numbers so that we can compare them to see what's best for the citizens moving forward.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think that's kind of my main point here. But just another question as far as, if this one's to Dawood, what are the main services that you've provided under this contract? Because I know that we then have like another contract. So what are the main services you provide under this contract specifically?
So in the past year, obviously, the largest project, the main issue was the State Street project and the redesign of that project. Beyond that, there are a couple public works projects that we got involved with. Paving designs, paving layouts, for paving overlays, and then just general representation in front of PennDOT. There's several projects that PennDOT is doing, the I-83 project, the Cameron Street project, that PennDOT is doing that the city's involved with. But the city needs to be represented in front of PennDOT so that the city can get this kind of services and goods that they need from PennDOT. If you go with PennDOT's defaults, you're not going to wind up with the end product that the city deserves.
Okay. Another question that I have, as far as the services you provide, when larger projects come through in the city, such as, a development that might require a traffic study, does your firm review those traffic studies for the city?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we have a very large traffic staff, traffic engineering staff. We do land development, we do traffic engineering. We do a lot of other types of services, and for the ones that we don't do, is like mechanical engineering, like chemical engineering, interior type stuff. We have subcontractors that can do that for us.
Okay.
And they are part of this contract also. They
All right.
they are listed in the terms of this contract.
And just, I don't feel like scrolling through the whole thing right now. On average, what's the hourly rate? If we could just give a ballpark average for, let's say, reviewing a traffic engineering study.
About $125 an hour.
All right. And this is more to the administration now. This is a cost it's bear by the city. So if you review a project for a development coming in that requires a traffic study, you review it. It takes you 10 hours for your team to review it. That's just, ballpark numbers. That's a cost that the city incurs or the developer.
Right now, the city's incurring it.
Okay. I thought that's what it was. It's something I'd like to look into if we would be going with more of a firm style. And right now that's where we're at. So even if it's on a temporary basis, maybe looking at some of those costs being put on developers as they come through. And because if a large developer comes in and they need a whole bunch of engineering reviews and it's costing us by the hour because we don't have an in-house engineer, then I think that's something we might need to look at, how we can encompass some of those cost savings, just because the fees add up quite quickly. And we're seeing a lot of different developments come into the city, which can trigger the cost, the requirement for a lot more reviews and really increase our cost. You sound like you would have the staff that if 1 million developers came in, you'd be able to get the reviews done. But that means the city for the bill for the city continues to increase. So that's something that I'd like to kind of take a look at to make sure that we aren't just incurring all those costs when we're billing it at an hourly rate of an average of 125 an hour. I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. President Bowers.
Thank you, Councilman Lawson. Good evening, everyone. I just have a few questions. Many were already asked, including the status of the search for a city engineer. It's my understanding there are no major changes to the scope of the work. And then the addendum expiring on December 31st of 2023. Mr. Bullock, you mentioned that Dawood engages with multiple departments throughout the city. If you wouldn't mind speaking to how many departments has Dawood engaged with over the past year, and what departments are they? Because most of what was mentioned are public works related.
Public Works, Parks and Rec Department is part of that, the Police Department's been part of that. I'm gonna say finance.
Yeah, we worked with finance for budgeting.
Can you please speak into the microphone?
So Parks and Rec, the planning department, we've done plan reviews for the planning department.
The Police Department's one of them as well.
Right. Police department. Codes enforcement,
What was the scope of your work with codes enforcement, if you don't mind me
I'm
asking?
sorry.
What was the scope of your work with the codes enforcement?
Okay, so, Ms. Montgomery from time to time has a structural related issue or the type of issue that requires an engineer's review. She reaches out to me and I have, a stable of structural engineers that have the ability to go out on site and do a reconnaissance or evaluate a certain situation that presents itself. And then we produce a report, and give it to her, and she does with it what she needs to do.
Okay, thank you. So Parks and Rec, finance, planning, police, codes enforcement, and then of course, Public Works. Missing any?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yeah, I guess that's facilities. Parks is also parks and facilities.
yes, that's
Right.
correct.
Right.
So facilities as well, okay. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Some did stuff with the housing department also.
Oh, building and housing,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, IP.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, President Powers and Councilman Majors. We are discussing the extending of our contract with Dawood Engineering. Are you available to ask any questions, or do you need a moment?
Yes, I am. And I think there's only one question. I apologize for my latest. I was dealing with a work issue. And I don't know if this question's been asked already, but in terms of the award, oh, well, not the award, the amount of the contract being maxed out at 150,000. That's the cap. So they are doing billable hours, correct? If we exceed that at any point in the year, then what happens?
The same that happened last year is you get a request for a reappropriation directly to that contract, which I think happened in September last year when the needs came down.
Okay,
So it's the same contract. We just changed the dollar amount and it gets presented to council with Dawood but these are the services that are hard to predict. For example, I'll give you, our office just contacted them because we're doing an underground tank removal. And the question is, who is qualified to talk about the specs to did a bid for an underground tank removal? Well, you need an engineer to do that. That wasn't an issue that was on the table. That's an issue that DEP raised or EPA raised. So-
okay. And then again, just because I did not remember off the top of my head, in terms of how much we ended up spending in terms with Dawood last year, that amount was, so we already have, and the total amount between this agreement and the agreement we're already entered into with Dawood is 150,000 plus an additional.
So by my recollection, there's 4 agreements, if I'm right.
Okay,
There's there's
Right.
advice on the RACP,
right.
which is a very specific assignment. There's this general engineering. There's the non-transportation general services that came through an RFP. And there is, I think, an extension of what's the Mulder Square project. Mulder Square, which is a long-standing contract. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but off the
Okay.
top of my head, all 4 of those have come to council at some different.
Right.
Right.
If we can get that overall number of how much money we're currently engaged with from the city with Dawood Engineering.
got that question.
Okay, you already had answered. My
Mine was
apologies.
a little different. Yours, I think, is the overall for all four
Yeah.
contracts. Mine was a comparison of, the past spend on all engineering and then the spend now.
Okay,
Correct. And we have a series, as you know, of other engineering firms with specific assignments. You know, we still,
Right.
for inspection of road work that went out. We've had 3 of them, I think, that have been approved over time.
okay,
And the one for Public Works for design and specs for vehicles, which was Barton Lagoon, which is separate altogether. So we use engineering services for a variety of things.
understood. And then my last question, and I apologize if this was already asked, where the city currently stands in its search for a permanent engineer.
So that was sort of asked and answered. The search
Okay,
is
I'll
go-
follow up with my fellow council members.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Councilman Majors and Councilman Daniels.
So, so right now I don't have the contract in front of me. Are the hourly rates the same as they were under the previous contract?
With a small increase to cover cost of living. Yes.
And then,
The contract is, the rates are based on categories rather than personnel. So, for example, if we have a project manager is billed out at a specific rate. A lab technician one is billed out at a different rate. So whoever works on the projects gets categorized in one of those categories. The categories themselves have gone through a 3% increase. And that was part of the submission for the non-transportation related general services contract. So there's a 5-year layout of all the rates for the next 5 years.
and so as of right now, since this contract hasn't been ratified, are we being billed at the previous rate or at the rate under this contract?
It's same plus the 3% because of cost of
Yeah,
living.
it's based on the 2023 rate chart that we had submitted with our proposals.
And under the previous contract, if we didn't renew, if we didn't ratify this one, what were the terms for? Was it month to month? I don't remember the previous contract and I don't have the current one in front of me.
So the previous one simply had in the resolution, a hard stop date. That was where it was, as opposed to the contract itself. So just like this resolution has a hard stop date on it. So
And as of right now, how far into the 150 are we in? Or are we?
I'm gonna say the number's about 45,000, but that's carrying over some money from last year. So let's give or take that.
Yeah, I believe we have billed the city since January 1, we have billed the city something like 20,000 to date. Yeah, because the latest invoice hasn't been submitted. So yeah, about 20,000, but there's another subcontractor that's preparing a land development plan for the Public Works Department, which we've committed $20,000 to, but their bill has not come seen yet. So that's where he's getting the 40,000.
Okay. So I think in this conversation, I've been a little bit confused just because I feel like this contract is the contract for the functions of the city engineer. But then you're also talking about the stuff that we would contract out to an engineering firm. We had a
Okay, so
had a city
so
engineer, so
the original contract that we submitted the proposal for was the non-transportation related general services contract. We were awarded that contract. But when there was no engineer available to administer that contract, we came before city council. I believe, Mr. Neil and Dan came before you guys and talked about having a temporary city engineer. And that's when we were asked to provide a rate chart for temporary engineering services, which we did. And then we were awarded that contract, which is the one that you're currently ratifying. So the original contract for the non-transportation related general services was the one back in February that you approved, with the caveat that the administration has to administer not through the office of the engineer, but through other mechanisms to divvy out the work.
Okay. So I think it would be good for us to have a better sense of the overlap between the functions of this contract and the job description of a city engineer. Because even as we're comparing last year's numbers to this year's numbers to the numbers when we had a city engineer, it's not going to be fully analogous if we don't have a really good sense of what it is we're doing that. So if the city could do that for us, I think that would be really helpful.
I would suggest that's more digestible in a report, because then you'll have specifics to each contract, to each billing, and what the scopes of each of the services were. Because trying to do that in this kind of setting does take it jumps it all around.
I mean, obviously, it's not going to be in this meeting right now, but I think
Right.
in any way, we need to have a good sense of that, of what it is that we're getting, what it is we're paying for, and what we're comparing to what. So that's, I think that's, based on the interviews, I mean, how many applicants did you guys get? How many applications are coming in?
Right, I'm aware of one current application that has not yet been, I think, fully vetted. That has come in this year, but I can't tell you that because what HR doesn't, HR gets them for every department, right? And someone up there vets at some level, and if they're completely not qualified based on something, they don't necessarily get passed on to any department. I mean, it's the same for lawyers, it's the same for other staff. So I can't tell you what's come to the city. That's an HR kind of question. The city gets a remarkable number of applications that are not qualified for jobs. And they don't really count, but if you're asking how many came in, that's a different question than how many qualified came in.
And then what are the mechanisms that are being done to recruit a potential city engineer?
Can you speak to that, or is that Dan?
That's more so Dan Hartman, but I do know of, as last week, we had awarded additional funding of $300 to be advertised again for for the service of engineering. So we are still out recruiting, soliciting for another engineer to come in.
That's it for me. Thank you.
And I do think Mr. Hartman's here.
So Monday, actually this Monday, we just received, I had emailed it to you. We received our first actual PE candidate that's licensed, apply. Right now, HR has to go through the vetting process. The person holds a correct license, but it's in Maryland, there is reciprocity. So they have to work that through the process. If that person is going through that process, they'll enter into the interview process of it. That will take, weeks of time because they'll have to go through background check and they'll have to do license checks and different things like that. But this past week, we did receive our first licensed PE to apply for it this year. So that person is going through it.
Mr. Hartman for walking in at the right moment.
I was in the back responding to an email and actually had answered Councilwoman Green's question to her via email. prior year spend, prior to COVID, range for anywhere from, it was 400 and some thousand up to 1.1 million in the 3 years prior to COVID. But I had shared those, numbers with you via email, but, the low range was 400 and some thousand on consulting spend, with the high range being 1.1 million, which is in 2018.
Thank you for that. And then just kind of as a follow-up to the hourly rate question that I asked, I did go back and find that the hourly rate from the previous agreement was, for an engagement manager was $195 an hour. For city engineering services is $150 an hour, and for group manager is $165 an hour. And I believe you said it would then be a 3% increase for cost of living?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Would anyone on council have any further questions? Then I turn it back to President Bowers.
Councilman Lawson, would you like the resolution to remain in committee once we receive this formalized report? Or would you like to recommend it to be added to our next legislative session agenda? What's your pleasure?
I believe I would like it to remain in committee just so that we could review the report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We will now move to the work of the Administration Committee. We'll begin with Resolution 27 of 2023. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read it into the record?
Resolution 27, 2023, a resolution confirming the reappointment of Tiffany E. Baldock Esquire to serve as the Senior Deputy City Solicitor for the City of Harrisburg.
Thank you. And Ms. Baldock is joining us by phone.
Are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Baldock, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, some of us are well familiar with you and your work, but if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to our new council members and the members of the public that are viewing.
Absolutely. First, I just want to say good evening, President Bowers and City Council members. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback on my end. So I'm Tiffany Baldock. By way of background, I have spent actually all of my legal career in public service. I started as a law clerk in Northumberland County, and I was also a mental health hearing officer, after which I came to Harrisburg as the Assistant City Solicitor in 2017. Subsequently, I was promoted to the Senior Deputy Solicitor position, which I held into the end of 2021. Fall of 2022, I came back in a remote capacity. I was also part-time. And then at the beginning of this year, I came back still remote, but in a full-time capacity.
Okay, thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind sharing, I guess, some of the work that you've done upon your return to a full-time staffer.
Yes, sure, absolutely. As I transition back to full-time work, just these past 3 months, I've been working on a lot of legislation and contracts. Contracts is a big need in the Law Bureau, as we, even just in this year, and we're only into mid-March, we have executed over 80 of them. So that position, I have been spearheading the contracts.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions for you. At this time, I'll open the floor to my colleagues to see if they have any questions. I'll begin with Councilwoman Daniels. Any questions for Ms. Baldock?
No questions.
Okay, Councilman Majors, any questions?
No questions for Ms. Baldock. I guess one question for well, I think Mr. Hartman exited the room, but in terms of the city's policy on remote work, just want to understand what that is in terms of having a full-time person in a remote capacity.
So it's unusual, but not undone. It's the third one I'm aware of. There was a director of DBHD that worked remotely from I believe, Florida. And I do not know the person. It was prior to my tenure that worked remotely from, I believe it was either Massachusetts or New Hampshire. And frankly, I don't remember what that position was. So we've had it in the past. I think Tiffany and I would actually agree, not the best thing in the world, but COVID has changed the world. It's proven itself that you can do jobs that are done by phone and computer, that are basically meetings and documents can be done remotely. Ms. Baldock has all the required licensing to work in Pennsylvania. The licensing doesn't restrict you from where you work to perform that work. Basically what I think Ms. Baldock learned on the job in her 4 years here would take me another 6 years to teach somebody else. So having someone who can do that and pick up almost anything the city does is frankly a benefit to our view, the taxpayers. We don't have a clear remote policy. Right before COVID, we started having a hybrid policy. Could you work remotely? That sort of COVID killed that. And we've not been back to that discussion, but we've had a lot of people work hybrid work or remote work because of COVID, and those departments kept operating.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. And just thank you, Ms. Baldock, for your willingness to come back and work with the city. Very familiar with your work when you were here with the city and in your capacity on your second stint with the city. We've worked together on a few items. So thank you for your willingness to work with
Thank you,
the
Councilman.
city. And we really appreciate your willingness to come back and this role and work with the administration on what a remote policy will look like for the future. Thank you. Thank you, President Bowers.
Thank you. Vice President Green, any questions?
Thank you, President Bowers. No, I don't have any questions for you, Tiffany. I'm glad to have you back and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you. Councilman Lawson, any questions for Ms. Baldock?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Rawls, any questions?
Thank you, President Bowers. I don't have any, just good evening, Ms. Ballback, and thank you for coming back to work with the city. We much appreciate it, even though we know the load can be heavy. We appreciate your dedication to come back.
Oh, thank you. Seeing and hearing no additional questions, I'd like to move to add Resolution 27 of 2023 to our next legislative session agenda for a vote. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Baldock. Welcome back. You're welcome. Okay, we will now move to Resolution 30 of 2023, Resolution 31 of 2023, Resolution 32 of 2023, and Resolution 33 of 2023. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read those into the record?
Resolution 30, 2023, a resolution appointing Mr. Ed Jarrock to serve on the Audit Committee for the City of Harrisburg. Resolution 31, 2023, a resolution appointing Mr. Andre Campbell to serve on the Audit Committee for the City of Harrisburg. Resolution 32, 2023, a resolution appointing Miss Jamie Roberts to serve on the Audit Committee for the City of Harrisburg. Resolution 33, 2023, a resolution appointing Mr. Austin Cheers to serve on the Audit Committee for the City of Harrisburg.
Thank you very much. I believe we're joined by all of our potential appointees. If you wouldn't mind coming and sitting at the table in front of us. Just a note, please speak into the microphone and you can turn it on with the gray button in the middle. Okay, thank you all for joining us this evening. Before we begin our interview process, I just wanted to note what the audit committee is responsible for. So the audit committee shall provide independent review and oversight of the city's financial reporting processes, internal controls, and independent auditors. In effectively carrying out its duties and responsibilities, the committee will help ensure that the city properly develops and adheres to a sound system of internal controls and utilizes procedures to objectively, assess the city's accounting and auditing practices. Additionally, the committee will help ensure that the independent auditors, through the independent audit, objectively assess the government's financial reporting practices. The committee shall be comprised of 5 voting members who are appointed by council and the chairperson of the Budget and Finance Committee of City Council or his or her designee, who shall serve as an ex officio or non-voting member of the committee. Terms of the committee shall be staggered for 5 years. I just wanted to note the responsibility of the committee. But if you all wouldn't mind taking a few minutes just to introduce yourselves and just share a little bit about you, a little bit about your interest in serving on the audit committee. Sure.
Okay, hi, council, my name's Ed Jurek. I live in Midtown. I work full-time in the IT space. I actually do cybersecurity work. In that function, I'm really a security engineer, but I also have 2 certifications. I'm a CISSP, which is a Certified Information Systems Security Professional, but I'm also a CISA, which is a Certified Information Systems Auditor. And so in my full-time job, one of the many tasks I do is oversee our credit card processing, which involves, technical controls, things of that nature. So basically, the reason why I thought I would serve on the audit committee, I saw there was a vacancy on the city's website. And since I had my audit certification, I'm not a CPA or anything like that, from a systems audit, thought it would be a good fit. And, I think it would be a good thing for me to serve as a volunteer in that capacity. As a side note, I am also volunteer president of the Sylvan Heights Science Charter School in Harrisburg. And I've been in that role for 6 years. That's going to be winding down. So I am familiar, since charter schools are public schools, I understand the public audit function and hiring an auditor and getting those reports and what it takes to review those and things of that nature. So I think I could, be glad to serve if approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cheers, please speak into the microphone.
Good evening, council. My name is Austin Shears. I moved to the city of Harrisburg maybe 3 years ago in July, and I graduated from Penn State with a degree in accounting. When I first moved to the city, it was kind of peak COVID. I graduated May of 2020. So I figured I'm really going to buckle down and get my feet planted. So within the next year, I was able to get my CPA designation. And after that, I figured, what can I do to get involved more in the city? And through that, in my day job, I'm a public accountant. So I do a lot of accounting for mainly nonprofits. I do individual accounting, individual tax prep, corporate tax prep, and nonprofit tax prep. And I've kind of gotten my foot in every kind of little niche area in Harrisburg. And through that, I've been able to start serving on a few boards of nonprofits as a treasurer. And through that, I'm learning that, there's a lot that goes into Harrisburg and the different individuals that make everything work. So this is how I'd like to get involved. And one of the 4 big tests to become a CPA is the auditing exam. And though it was not my favorite, I don't do audit in my day-to-day, but I do reviews and I do compilations, which are 1 and 2 steps below audits. I do work closely with a lot of auditors, as many of my clients require annual audits. So I understand the process that a lot of auditors will be going through.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Roberts.
Good evening, council. My name is Jamie Roberts. I am now a resident of the city of Harrisburg for the last 8 years. Graduated from the University of Phoenix with my accounting degree and also have an MBA. Worked for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania with the state retirement system as an accountant too. So I do work with our defined benefit plan in the general accounting area. I don't have a lot of auditing experience. I have done some in school, both with my undergrad and my MBA. I did work for the insurance department, which I guess I could say I do have some auditing experiences, looking and overseeing the operations of different insurance companies and making sure that they are able to service the public in their capacity. I think that being on this board will allow me to see a different side of the city, get involved in the city. I'm, kid-free now. My youngest has graduated, so now I do have the time and I have the ability to serve.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
My name is Andre Campbell. I love when I'm in a room full of Harrisburg people to remind everyone I'm from Stilton. But I own and operate businesses in the city for a long time. My background started as an accountant, and my audit experience in our firm was actually on the other side. We were audited by the IRS annually. So preparing to go through an audit would be my experience there. Today, I run a wealth management firm, preparing financial analysis for a lot of our clients. Also serve on the Harrisburg Chamber and look forward to the opportunity to work on this committee. I thought what I'm really excited about is the people sitting here look like the city. We have men, women, and people of color, so that's really important.
Thank you very much. And I too am excited that you all are interested. There wasn't a time too long ago when the audit committee lacked diversity. And the members were begging for women and people of color to participate. So I'm really grateful that you all have expressed an interest, and hopefully we can continue to work together. I don't have any other additional questions. I'll begin questioning with Vice President Green, since she or her designee will serve as an ex officio member of this committee. Vice President Green.
Thank you, President Bowers, and thank you all for being here tonight. I'm excited to see you all and excited to see this board looking to get back up and really running and functioning. So that really brings me joy. I really only have one question for you all. You can answer it in whatever order you feel. But just what do you think is the biggest asset you'll bring to this board?
Well, in my day-to-day, I am a public accountant and I do financial statement prep and analysis, and I do general ledger review and bank reconciliations, and I work closely with a lot of local auditors.
I guess my response to that, again, is my IT background. I don't know all the details of the inner workings of the city right now, but I do know they've been trying to get off a big mainframe system and go to an ERP system. I have, and many years ago, I've worked on ERP, done conversions, I understand. So I think I bring more tools perspective, understanding that perspective.
I'd say I have a vast background in finances, working in accounting at one point, going through audits myself, and now running a wealth management firm and wrapping up my certified professional planner designation. I just think there's a lot of experience on both sides of the coin that I bring.
Along with Andre, I've basically since high school have been in some form of a financial role, working in banks, working with the state and the insurance department, working for an insurance company, underwriting company. So I think that having the financial background will prepare me in what we're going to be hopefully embarking on here.
Thank you very much. That's the only question I had. I will just say that I'm also excited, not just for the diverse look of the makeup, but also the diversity of the background that you all come from and what you bring to this board, or will potentially bring to this board. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman, or excuse me, Councilman Lawson, any questions?
Thank you, President Bowers. Thank you all for coming here. You are definitely impressive individuals, each one of you. The question that I have, it always something that I find interesting with people when they sit down in front of us. What makes you want to do this?
Well, for me personally, like I said, I'm currently at this charter school. I've been on that board for 6 years. That's wrapping up. This is like a quarterly meeting, so not nearly as many meetings as the school does. But I just believe that all people need to have some kind of government service or public service of something, right? In my whole life, many years ago, I was chairman of the Harrisburg Environmental Advisory Board. I did that for 4 years. I was actually on the charter school board 20 years ago when the school opened, and I rolled off. So I always just try to keep a little bit of government service or some kind of public service in my life. I find it fulfilling, and that's really why I'm doing it.
Well, as a tax accountant, I don't have a ton of free time right now, but in my free time, I do volunteer on a few boards in the area as a treasurer, and the people that I've gotten to work with that are all different kinds of people in this area, different variety of citizens that I get to work with. I work with a small community center in Allison Hill, and I volunteer on the neighborhood committee for Midtown. And there's just so many people that do a lot of different things. And as the treasurer, I'm more so on the number side of things. So I don't feel like I'm really sticking my neck out, but this is my, I'd like this to be my opportunity to do so.
Just feel like my whole life I've volunteered, I've given back, I've been able to do that. And now that I have that time, I'd like to get back into doing those types of things.
So it's been like peaks and valleys. He has time, he doesn't, she has time. I definitely don't have time. I have two toddlers at home. They're probably wondering where I'm at right now. But when the opportunity was brought to my attention, the narrative of having eyes that look like the city, look over what's going on in the city was just really important to me.
Thank you. That was all that I have as far as questions. Again, everyone has an impressive resume, and what I find more impressive is, as you just stated, many of you don't have time, or you will have time, but you don't at the moment, but you're still willing to serve. So that speaks, volumes of your character. So we thank you very much for coming out before us.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rawls, any questions?
Thank you, President Bowers. I don't have any questions. I just thank all four of you for being here tonight and for taking the time. Like Councilman Lawson said, some of you have time, some of you don't, but you still are here because you feel like it's important. You all come with such vast experience that I think it's just going to be great. And I just thank you for wanting to be a part of it and for volunteering. So I make that a point. It's volunteer, and you're still here, and that means a lot. Because volunteering is just, it's some type of grit. It's humbling. So just thank you. And I look forward to the great things you're going to do and how you can help.
Thank you. Councilman Majors, any questions for the group?
Not for the group, just a quick comment for the group. Just again, as my other colleagues who echo the sentiments, just thank you all for your willingness to serve our community. As was mentioned, the audit committee, I know they've been seeking new members, some of who have served for over a decade in their capacity. So getting some new eyes on the books and in Harrisburg is going to be invaluable, particularly of the diversity of the candidates, not just of the background, but again, to be more inclusive and reflective of what the city looks like. outside of Mr. Cheers, who was new to the city, newer to the city. Welcome. You came at a very, difficult time during, COVID, but glad you're getting your.
Great to see people walking up
Yes,
and down Second
exactly,
Street.
exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to see energy back in the city, but the rest of everyone else, I've met in one capacity or another, and have been dedicated, people who have been dedicated to this community for several years. So thank you all. The only question I do have is more for us in terms of the position. I know there's a couple of vacancies. There's two terms that technically, I guess, have not expired. Just want to make sure I know which terms everyone's filling. I know are we replacing one of the terms that has not expired?
Yes, that's my understanding. That Mr. Reaver,
Okay,
the sole CPA amongst the two that are still, their terms haven't expired. Mr. Cheers, as the CPA in this group, would replace him.
okay, all right,
But I'll review the terms before everyone leaves.
okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you all for your willingness to serve.
Councilwoman Daniels, any questions?
So I just have one question for you all, if you could identify any potential areas of conflicts of interest, and then I have a few questions for Laviera.
Conflicts of interest, I can't think of any. I know I fill out that disclosure form that what's that called? The financial interest form with the charter school. I've never had any issues. I think it's the same paperwork. I wouldn't think there would be, I can't think of any conflicts. Yeah, so. Okay, thank you. So I'm not aware of any. Thank you.
No, I can't. I also can't think of any. I know for auditing, you have to be 100% independent of the entity that you're auditing, but all of my work is in private and I don't have anything to do with it.
I don't see a conflict of interest either. I've, just like him, have filled out a disclosure form with the state, so I don't have any issues.
I can't think of any.
And then for Laviera, how long has the audit committee been without quorum? How long has the audit committee been without quorum?
I don't know. It did not meet at all in 2022. It's COVID sort of screwed all these things up, right? So they met once a year, I think, for the 2 years before that, but I'm not positive. I just don't know. But whenever they met, they had a quorum. I mean, that I don't. They usually had at least 3 people there. For a long time, they had 4 people there, and then people sort of dropped off as we went on. I think one of the members moved out of the city, and could not serve anymore.
And then, so what does that mean for the work they'll have to do, like catching up with what has been needed to be done?
I do not know.
Normally they would audit for audit.
Can you speak into a microphone? I'm sorry, that way everybody can hear you. It's okay.
Normally they would be responsible for the 2021 audit. And that's what we believe we'll be reviewing. I will have to confer with the solicitor for anything beyond that, but the intent for this particular audit committee is to review the 2021 audit.
So, okay. But they'll be, okay. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Are there any other additional questions, council members? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'd just like to review the terms that are outlined in each of the resolutions just for your reference. Mr. Jarek, your appointment shall be for a term commencing on March 29th, 2023. Oh, that will have to change because our next legislative session isn't until April. But the expiring date would be April, likely the beginning of April 2025. Mr. Campbell, your appointment shall begin again at said date in April, expiring the beginning of April 2028. Ms. Roberts, your appointment shall commence April 2023 and expire April 2027. And then Mr. Cheers, your appointment will begin on April 2023 and expire on April 2028. So we will clearly define our dates. Our schedule just changed. So we will make those amendments when we vote during our next legislative session. So thank you all for being here. With that, I'd like to move to add, am I missing something?
Just so it's clear to to the members, before council can vote under their State Ethics Act regulations, a statement of financial interest form does have to be filed with the city clerk at least 10 days prior to a vote. So you have plenty of time to do that, but that is the requirement.
Thank you. Mr. Truesdale will share the form with everyone in advance of our vote. I'd like to move to add Resolution 30 of 2023, Resolution 31 of 2023, Resolution 32 of 2023, and Resolution 33 of 2023 to our next legislative session agenda for a vote. I'd also like to note that Resolution 13 of 2023 will be tabled at this time. Ms. Moore was unable to join us again this evening, so it will remain in committee once we've had an opportunity to speak with her. So this concludes the work of the Administration Committee. Our final committee business this evening is with the Budget and Finance Committee. I will defer to Vice President Green, our Budget and Finance Committee Chair.
Thank you very much, President Bowers. We'll try Resolution 28 of 2023 again, which is a resolution ratifying the professional services agreement with NW Financial Group LLC to continue to provide professional financial advisory services related to the funds the city of Harrisburg received as part of the American Rescue Plan Act and for other related expenses. And then if you could just introduce yourself.
Good evening, Councilwoman, Council President, and members of council. My name's Tom Beckett, and I represent NW Financial Group. We have a large team that has worked on a lot of the American Rescue Plan Act work that the city's done in 2022. We started our work with you, reaching out to your community and listening and helping the administration and everybody else in the community to understand what is eligible expenditure under those grant funds and what is. We've also helped the administration kind of look at some of the suggested programs and funding, and we've strategized with the mayor and her staff at numerous occasions. We've also worked with Marita to report out the quarterly expenditures to date to the feds. It's they have a fairly rigorous and robust electronic reporting system that we work with most of our clients to set them up on, and then ride shotgun essentially. Our contract was a one-year contract for 2022, and this contract I think extends that out through the end of 2024. Basically, it mirrors the end of the ARPA funds and when they're done.
All right, thank you. I have a couple of questions and I'll open up to my colleagues. If I'm correct, the billing is at $200 an hour, correct?
That is correct.
And how much has the city incurred thus far from your services?
For 2022, it was $15,550, I believe.
And was the majority of that for those community outreach meetings? Was it for the quarterly reporting? I guess, where would you say the bulk of your time with the city has been spent?
I'm gonna make a guess. I don't have the numbers, the breakdown in front of me. But my guess is that it's a combination of the community outreach and some of the specific eligibility questions that we've been asked to address and put down in writing.
Okay, and then would the administration or either yourself be able to provide us with the actual breakdown of, I guess, billable hours?
We'd be happy to do that.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to my colleagues, for questions, and then I'll come back to myself at the end. I'm gonna start, just kind of mix it up a little bit. I'm gonna start with, Councilman Majors.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's kind of difficult at the beginning to start without getting that breakdown of the expenses that were incurred. Because I know for me personally, I'm trying to get a better understanding of all the activities that have occurred thus far to date. I know, Marita, I know we have the reporting that we have to do
That's
on a regular basis. Are they filling out the documents? I know you are the signatory for.
No, I complete the documents.
Okay.
They often will advise me on particular components of the programmatic report. It's very detailed. They want specific information. But the first one I was able to do pretty much by myself because we had no activity from the prior year. And then they assisted me with the other reports. And but it's been sort of a joint effort in trying to file the programmatic reports. As I said, they can get quite complicated. But I would say, I don't have it in front of me and I will provide it, but I would say most of the budget was for advisement for those first 5 meetings in which they attended and provided fairly extensive descriptions to the public, of course, in the public meetings, extensive information about the types of funding that could be used for ARPA. And then in addition to that, I don't know, I know many of you attended those meetings. So there were the 2 that I attended, there were upwards of 20 to 30 people that asked specific questions, and they didn't answer all the questions because the administration answered some, but they probably answered 3/4 of the questions. And in addition to that, the team has met with the mayor's office specifically on what we would submit to city council to make sure that we were within the confines of the law. As you know, it's quite a description of what she would like to attain, she, the mayor. And so we've had at least 2 or 3 direct meetings in the mayor's office discussing those matters. And then we've had multiple cases where we've sent requests to them about, is this eligible? Where does it fall within the eligibility? But I certainly will provide a full breakdown. But the majority of it has been consultative in terms of how do we interpret the law, much like with the DBHD, where they use a professional consultant to make sure that the federal guidelines are followed. Civitas, sorry. Very similar to what Civitas does. Very, very similar. I didn't realize that myself until I was involved recently with Civitas for the federal Parks and Rec grants. And it's almost identical, the type of, okay, yes, you can do this, but be careful to follow this rule or reg, so forth and so forth, so on. So it's very, very much trying to make sure we don't overstep our boundaries with the feds and to make sure we stay within the letter of the law so that everything is copacetic. And that's where the majority of our time has been spent in our consultation with our financial advisors from NW Financial.
Okay, thank you for that. And then with respect to any work product out of those 5 meetings, I know, I guess the work product from those 5 meetings, like, I know there were, like surveys, people were trying to gather information. Was that something that was just provided for internal purposes, or was there anything like council was to receive from all those meetings that occurred?
Well, Ms. Gina Johnson had provided a work product to the mayor, which I believe she shared with council, but I can't exactly recall that. And that would have summarized all of the activity that the NW Financial attended those 5 meetings within the neighborhoods. In addition to the other work products, I will have to say that they were internal meetings and had some degree of confidentiality, but we could certainly, I could certainly give you my meeting minutes that I took in there if legal says whatever I provided in the legal minutes is
Okay.
public information,
All right.
but would be happy to provide what we have in terms
Okay.
of product.
All right, perfect, thank you. And then for NW, in how many other communities are you providing similar services?
We are providing services in Pennsylvania to Allentown, and in New Jersey, we probably have 30 or 40 communities, ranging from very large to smaller communities.
Okay, and then for all of those, are those throughout the entire use of the ARPA funds, or did those contracts vary? Because I think I know a lot of communities, at this point, I know we're all in. While we still have some time to spend the money, I think with, supply chain issues, workforce issues, being able to actually utilize all the funds that the city received, and communities across, the nation received due to COVID is, I think communities, despite still having some time, could have come across a time crunch. I'm just trying to see if you're still, what that looks like for those other communities that you are providing similar services to.
That's a great question, and it's one that I wrestle with a lot with a couple of other clients, and I think that the city, Harrisburg, is further along on defining their projects and implementing their projects than many of my clients. My worry is that a lot of this money will get recaptured by the feds, and that's not doing anything.
Right.
It's not what it's designed for.
Right.
So one of the things that I'm keenly aware of is that our advice needs to be very specific and say, this may be eligible in some cases, but are you going to get it done in time? We give that kind of we'll give that kind of perspective as well. So that's a very, very good question, and one we're wrestling with all of those clients.
Okay, and then, well, the last one is more of a comment for the administration. I can follow up later, but thank you, Vice President Green.
Thank you. President Bowers?
Thank you. We did receive notes or minutes from those town hall meetings, but they were very limited, to say the least. At that point, we had, I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but those council members that did attend the public meetings, we were glad that we did, because those minutes or reflections just didn't provide much of anything to us. And at that point, we had seen 100-page documents from other neighboring municipalities of what they intended to do, or some level of a plan. We did receive a plan on May 10th of 2022. Of 3 pages of what the city plans were. So again, I think I'll speak for myself. I was disappointed. I think I expected, maybe I don't have a clear understanding of NW Financial's role here, because I think I expected something transformational or a larger work product with your assistance, perhaps. Am I wrong in thinking that maybe that should have occurred, or what should the expectation be of the city continuing to work with you through 2024?
We're ready and able to do as much, to dig as deep, do as much as you want with this contract. I will say something that has been apparent to me since we started here, which is that the folks in the administration are very much ahead of us on some of these things. There's one person, I won't name who she is, but she's got it all figured out. And doesn't leave a lot for us to do.
That's disappointing, and it seems like we're wasting money.
I'm complimenting the city. Councilwoman.
Okay,
And again, our work was largely on the front end, was in leading those meetings
hmm
and assessing some of the ideas that were coming in from the community, and then assessing some of the ideas percolating up through the administration.
okay. And so I guess now that we've received the most recent proposal for the remainder of the funds, what was your involvement in that process? I know Ms. Kelly mentioned 2 to 3 meetings with the mayor and I guess other members of the administration, but what did your involvement look like there?
With this contract or with the prior contract?
I don't know what, I don't,
This would be the prior.
would it have been the prior contract that produced what we just received recently?
That's correct.
Okay, so the prior contract.
You know, again, it was internal meetings with the mayor and her staff, evaluating, potential program expenditures, whether or not they were eligible under ARPA. And I think we have memos and correspondence to that effect.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Councilman Lawson.
I knew,
Drew a
I knew by
completely
the
blank,
eyes.
complete blank.
That's fine. Thank you very much for coming here before us. Just so that I have a little bit of clarity, your role here is more or less just letting us know what is eligible through ARPA, or was there an advisement of the best use of funds, or how did this consulting come about?
Initially, it was to advise you on eligibility for ARPA. Many of our other clients, particularly up in New Jersey, and I think it's going to happen in Allentown, utilize us to help them design program. In other words, here's we want to do let me give you an example. A city in New Jersey wanted to do a homeowners insurance program, and we assessed whether or not that was eligible. Yes, so, particularly in disproportionately impacted communities, as this was. In that case, they asked us to go ahead and design the program, to build out the program, to build eligibility questionnaires, to get documentation lists that had to come from people. That's what we do in cases where maybe the administration doesn't have the same kind of depth that you have here. We have not been asked to do that. We're able to do it, we're willing to do it, but we have not been asked to do that.
Thank you. And then my question would be, how do you see your role moving forward?
I see there's a couple of things. The reporting is fairly easy for us to do with Marita, even virtually at this point. One of the things that the city is looking to do quite a few programs that help homeowners. My concern is that is the reporting of those expenditures gets very complex and very, very deep. This contract allows us to come in and help you out with that if the city so desires.
Thank you. That's all of my questions.
Thank you, Councilman Lawson. Councilwoman Ross.
Thank you, Vice President Green. Good evening to you both. Thank you for being here. Most of my questions have been asked and answered, but I just wanted you to elaborate more on what would that, if you are given this contract again, and you said you could help us with programming, especially with affordable housing or more homeowner development, what would a program look like that you would craft for us?
So what we've done in the past is we do everything. We set up eligibility requirements for the individuals. Those would be based on ARPA regulations. We then have in the past set up an electronic application system, and we have vetted those applications, making sure that people were eligible, making sure that documentation supporting that eligibility was in hand. We have also in the past hired folks who are multilingual because a lot of people don't, interact with English language only, internet application systems. So we've had the facility to be able to talk to anybody who wants to come in and take advantage of these programs. That's what we've done in the past, and that gets fairly a lot of work and a lot of expense very quickly. We can do that for the city. That's what this contract will allow us to do.
Okay, and will this contract, does it also allow you, because I know the other one did, to say, you've spoken of it a little bit, to say whether the projects that we want to do are, one, ARPA eligible, and two, are we on the right timeline to get them finished without the money being retracted? So is that, this contract continues to allow you to do that, correct?
Correct.
And have you spoken, I know we haven't heard anything, but I don't know if you've spoken to the administration about any projects that we've set forward in ARPA. We've had a presentation on them. Are there any in there that are, one, not ARPA eligible, or two, that won't meet the timeline and the money could be, go back to the government that you've seen?
I've seen a list of ARPA projects and programs, and we've vetted that list and given feedback to the administration. Most of the ones were eligible. There were a couple things that they could actually even be broadened quite a bit. But in terms of whether or not you're going to spend it fast enough, I think it depends on the program. If some of these programs are once and done and they come out, some of them are, particularly construction programs. Have to be careful that you get things not only promised but actually spent. And those are the two different things. You have to have so much obligated by 2025 and spent by 2026. And so I think that is someplace where you can rely on us to help you with that. Again, I think the Councilman Major's question about bottlenecks and everything else is one that gives everybody.
Okay. And do you also help? So if you look at a project and see, oh, I don't know if you guys are going to meet this deadline, do you help with solutions to meet the deadline? Like, are you able to help change it around and say, hey, I think this is what you should do, and then you will meet the deadline? Are you able to help us get extensions on any deadline with this new contract? So sorry, that was a two-part question. So would you, if you see something's not going to meet the deadline, are you able to give solutions on how to meet the deadline? And are you able, if it's possible, to file for any extension?
I'm not aware of extensions.
Okay.
The law is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I would hope that we would be able to give you some advice, but sometimes that stuff is out of anybody's control. Again, wages, finding people to deliver stuff. I think our work on the outset is, looking at the proposed, let's take a housing assistance program, looking at the proposed program and seeing making sure that you have the resources available, and the design of the program available so that it gets expended as quickly as possible. I don't think I can help you on delays in concrete if you're building something of a pool. But I think we may be able to use our experience in New Jersey and other places in designing the programs that go directly to help people in suggestions to do that fast.
Okay, thank you. And my last question was, I know you had mentioned, the administration, including Ms. Marita, had done so much work. Well, you didn't have to put forth too much, I believe. I might have your words wrong, but I know you were saying as a compliment. But I just wanted to touch on that and just probably ask the administration, what is it that, since you were able to do things so well, what is it that you still need NW, I don't want to say it wrong, NW Financial for that you're unable to do on your own?
Well, if you're talking about the program reporting, it really,
All of it, yeah,
well, let's start there because that might be the easiest answer.
okay.
As he said, much of the program reporting as it stands now is, well, it was a little complicated because we did take the revenue loss. And to take the revenue loss, as you know, Ms. Green, Vice President Green, we had a lot of kind of stepping to do to make sure we documented that in the first quarter report so that that was copacetic, that there was a couple somersaults we had to do to get that correct. And I did have to rely on Heather, who is kind of the resident expert with NW Financial with ARPA, as Tom is as well. And so that was extraordinarily helpful. Now, as we get into the implementation of, assuming council approves something similar to what the mayor proposed, there's a lot of moving parts because it will depend on what type of housing. Is it rental? Is it you know, ownership? Who receives it, how it's delegated. Then if you go into the parks, the same thing. There gets to be a great deal of complexity in terms of meeting the federal guidelines. So I will need to rely on them to a degree to kind of advise me. Now, beyond that, as we move into council accepting and approving an ARPA plan and we start to get to the execution, that's where we may, as you know, Denise Hill has been enormously beneficial in providing kind of her CDBG experts to ARPA expertise. And that's helped us save money because things that Ms. Hill, and I assume that's who he was referring to, and I'm proud to name her because she's excellent and she, you know, really knows the federal government. And as you know, she's really helped us through CDBG, ESG, home, and so forth. So I think that's the reason why the mayor chose to use her expertise to help. And then she occasionally asked him questions or his team. But as we move forward, as you know, the ball is going to roll real fast once you guys give us the green light. And when it rolls, that means we have to let contracts, we have to determine who's going to be the contractor. We have to make sure the contractor meets all the federal standards for Davis-Bacon and whatever else requirements are in the feds. And I don't know those regs. I know they exist, but I'm not an expert. So there's a lot of expediency with 24, 25, and 26 coming up on us pretty quickly for major infrastructure improvements that you as council and the mayor's administration will execute in the next 24 to 48 months. And so we just want to make sure that, again, with Civitas, we're able to do CDBG, home, and ESG correctly. With NW Financial, we're hoping for that same benefit of having excellent advice as we move for this really quick movement we're going to start to make once council feels comfortable with the execution of the projects they want to see elevated in the ARPA legislation that you put forth.
Thank you for that. That's all the questions I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Daniels.
Thank you. So I'll preface what I'm about to say. My questions are based on my experience of your work as a council person. I have no idea what work you did other than the public meetings. And at the public ones I attended, it seemed the presenters already had an idea of what they wanted. And often informed audience members that what they were asking for was not going to be part of. We then received the proposal from the mayor a few weeks ago, maybe last week, but no guidance on what the instructions and rules are around the funding, other than this is the proposal. So as council members, we've received almost zero benefit from your services. And we're the ones, council and the mayor's office are the ones tasked with executing how the ARPA funds are expended. So from my, I guess I'm wrong. You also helped Miss Kelly set up her profile. So I'm not really clear on what the value is of the services that you're providing, because we haven't received any services as a body. I mean, unless other members did. But as far as I'm aware, we haven't received any services. We're in the process of having community meetings around the proposal. We're going into them almost blind because we really don't know what the restrictions and what the rules are around allocating those funds. So I don't really, I would like for you to elaborate a little bit more on what it is you contributed that is a benefit to the city and specifically to the body of council.
That's probably on us, is not communicating or suggesting that we communicate directly with council. I've taken the lead of the mayor and Marita and all the other folks in terms of interacting with this body. I think that going forward, if you want that to be more robust and more frequent, I would like that.
So what would that be? I mean,
Well, for instance, if you need assistance with setting up with these community meetings, like they help the mayor set them up, I'm sure that they could work in constant collaboration with you, and they can help to, set the meetings up if you'd like. They can help to respond to inquiries that occur at the meetings. You tell us what you'd like and we'd be very happy to provide it. So far, the city administration has provided questions to them and hopefully to guide you in what their recommendations were last May 10th when they presented the original report. But we're happy, you instruct us what you'd like and we're happy to provide it to you, as you believe is needed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean for this to be sound offensive, but the running of the meetings, Councilman Green will already be doing with our clerk staff. So
Would you like them present though, in case questions would?
not at $200 an hour.
Right, I was
we can
gonna
sit
say, I
where we
think that we
should.
could better use the funds by gathering the information and relaying any questions that we have to
Yeah.
them.
Exactly. I'm just offering the opportunity, whatever you as the council and as a body is total respect for you, what you feel you need from NW Financial. We're happy. I was just using that as an
Yeah.
example and pardon
No,
me
no.
if I went too far. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to use that as an example that perhaps they could help with
Yeah,
that, but.
I guess from the outset, I think I expected that you would give us guidance on how the ARPA money is, what are the kind of a dummy down the regulations for both mayor and council so that we have an understanding of what we can, what we are able to do and not to do, so that as we're having all of the community meetings, as we're having now this discussion about the actual plan, we know that we're not voting for something that's unlawful or that's permissible, or, what the rules are, that is it even doable, et cetera, right? So we're going into, so there's now a plan that's been proposed and we have not been equipped with the tools to assess, how proper that plan is, how effective it, we can maybe think about how effective it might be. But in the absence of knowing what the regulations allow us to do and not to do, we could completely be voting for something that's improper, right? And we paid you at the very beginning of, we entered a contract at the very beginning of the process so that we could have the information that we need to make these decisions, to have these discussions, to even negotiate, right? Because there may be something the mayor wants and we want something different. They're both permissible. How do we go back and forth on that? The services you've provided have been specifically to the mayor's office. It sounds like you may have given them advice in confidential meetings, but that did not trickle down to us. So we are in a position of not really being able to assess the legality of the plan, and we're not in a position to negotiate around the plan. So I don't see any value of this contract to the city, because this is really a contract for the mayor's office. And I think the mayor's office has the staff it needs to make the decisions between Marita, Marita's, the people she supervises, and the controller's office, and Denise, the building and housing committee. So I'm not, I don't really think this is a good value for us as a city. So I guess it wasn't that many questions. It was more commentary. And I apologize, but from my perspective as a council person, this contract hasn't yielded any value for us. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a few questions, and then I'll ask my colleagues if they have any other follow-up questions. I guess the first question, just pretty plain and simple. Were there any tangible reports that NW Financial produced? Any like tangible reports that we could get a copy of?
We produced materials for the community outreach meetings. We have produced, I don't
Could you
believe.
speak a little closer?
Oh,
to the
sure, I'm
microphone?
sorry. We produced materials for the community outreach meetings. We have produced at request of the administration memos on eligibility. I don't know that our contract envisioned a large public report at this point in time. The programs weren't developed. We can share with you some of the questions that we've answered, not only to the public at large at those meetings, but online. We had a whole bunch of online questions that we answered and forwarded those answers to the mayor's administration. So to that answer, I don't think we envisioned a large report at this time.
Okay. I guess for the administration, if we could get a copy of that information, that will be, I guess, somewhat helpful. I think this kind of answers my second question already, but did you provide an analysis of the ARPA proposal that the mayor put forward? Did you provide an analysis of that? Was it in writing or was it just a verbal analysis?
I believe, I know that I provided an analysis of at least two of the components of the mayor's program in writing. The other ones were so clearly eligible that there didn't, we said, yes, it's eligible, or yes, it's not. Some of them were a little bit finer and grayer lines and needed a little bit more explanation as to how and where they would fit within the program.
Okay, if we could get a copy of that as well. I think you might see the theme that we didn't get a copy of anything, or, we didn't get the information that you provided. And I'm not sure why, but it wasn't given to council as a body. Does your company have an analysis of the ARPA legislation itself? Like,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
can we get a copy of that?
Absolutely. The ARPA legislation is 433 pages or something like that.
And that's why we would hire a firm to analyze it and give us a summary, not.
We have summaries for that. We can share it with you.
Okay.
And I think that would maybe answer Councilwoman Daniels' questions as well.
And then I personally would have liked to see your firm be more proactive, instead of the response kind of being, well, if you ask us, we'll do it. Sometimes, some things are assumed, and I guess they shouldn't be. But sometimes when you don't know what to ask, you're waiting for something to come, saying, okay, well, once we get a little something, maybe we'll have a little more guidance. And I thought that was the purpose of this contract to provide some guidance. Looking at some of the scope of work, that's in the original contract, I believe it states it's to develop a planning process and advise the city regarding the eligibility of proposed expenditures and provide the city with updates on guidance from the federal government and other relevant parties, create and implement an eligibility review process, and advertise on documentation protocol, and provide consulting and implementation support as needed, and meet with or present information to city officials as required, as requested. And so just looking at some of that scope of work, or scope of services, it seems like the main focuses have been providing some consulting for questions asked from the mayor's office and providing feedback directly in those meetings, along with some of the reporting assistance to the Finance Bureau. Are there any other areas in that scope of service that you can say, like, you guys really did work on? And understand the scope of service doesn't mean you're going to provide everything. It's a scope of service. But I guess just kind of thinking with a proactive mind of, if this is the scope of service, what did you do to try to meet some of those other areas of scope if you weren't specifically asked for them?
Yeah, I mean, some of the other areas of the scope really have to do with the timing of when your programs are approved, when they're developed, and when they're rolled out. A lot of the stuff that you read just there kind of goes to Councilman Lawson's question of, how did you do this in other places? If you're, I don't think that the city's program are there yet. And we're there and able to do that, but until the program gets to the point where it's ready to be rolled out, we really can't legitimately do anything like that.
Okay, so then the bulk of the work wasn't front end. There's still a bulk of work to be done on the back end is kind of the thought process as well then?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not trying to do a trick
well,
question or anything. I'm just trying to understand as we're moving forward, understand this contract has a cap, but kind of trying to understand, are we looking at 15,000? Are we looking at 40,000? Understand what the cap is, but that's a range as well.
There's another thing we need to look at. When we put the original contract through, it was amended to remove some of that development of actual programming in there. So that work was actually removed for them. And that's the stuff that Denise and Neil and a lot of us had to work on. And as it relates to some of the disconnect that you're referring to, when we did put the plan together in April, the plan was always, and the invites were out for 2 members of council to be part of that planning team. But council leadership had decided that it was in the best interest, so you could vet the ideas to not be involved in that planning process. And those were April meetings that happened. That's the meetings they were at. Neil was in Merida, myself, Commissioner Carter, Dave Baker, where all those things were discussed of what came out of those meetings, but those were done internally. Council was offered to be part of that, but it was thought to best to not bring you into that process so you could then vet it just from the outside. So that process did happen. It was last April. Finished April 28th was the final meeting, which led to a report, I think, at some point
May 10th.
May 10th. So yeah, April 28th was our last meeting.
Okay, I will just say that as a member of council, I was not aware of the meeting nor the invitation until I guess like a week or so ago when I was having a conversation and someone told me that the offer was out there. So I will just say that I don't know about other members of council, but I never received an offer about this in general.
So 2 council members were directly approached by the mayor and members of her administration to participate. I declined because I felt as if it would be counterproductive if we had to receive the proposal as a body and then conduct our own series of town hall meetings. I didn't think it was Yeah, I did not think that it was a productive use of time for me to sit in and crafting whatever the proposal entailed. I didn't think that that was, I wanted to look at it objectively, just like all the other residents that would receive it. So that's why.
I appreciate that. I
Same
will
for me
just,
too. Sorry,
Okay.
Vice President Green, same here. I was also, so, but I wanted to look at it through the eyes the same way you all were, not just being in the meetings. I felt like that was not being objective of it, so.
all right,
But I
Thank
did
you.
think we were still gonna get a report on what happened.
right, a little more. And I will just say, and this is just in general, I believe that, certain meetings should be public, not closed door. And that the public should be part of the crafting process. I understand that we had, the town hall meetings, that the administration had the town hall meetings beforehand, but I think having those meetings as it's being crafted in the public, or at least, available to the public would be useful as well, even if it wasn't something that provided commentary. But, that's nothing that we can go back to. I guess just looking at this and what we have or have not received, it is kind of, it does bring to question why, like, what's the point, of this other than the financial reporting piece of it? And I suppose I'll wait until we get a little more information from you guys, as far as some of the stuff that we've requested. So I won't ask that this moves forward to the next legislative session. And I guess we'll just leave it at that. And hopefully, moving forward, see, we have something from our solicitor here, but hopefully moving forward, if this is ratified, we can have some more proactive conversations. If you wouldn't mind providing your contact information to the city council clerk so that we can have access if we would have any questions. I will say you are welcome to come to the meetings, but it will not be an official request for you to come to the meetings.
Is that you not trying to spend any money?
Yes,
Okay,
that
just,
is.
just, I
that is-
translated that correctly?
That is
Okay.
trying to make for sure that we are being as careful with the taxpayers' funds as possible. Because I would personally say, we can take, I mean, the notes that we got were pretty much a little paragraph in the video. So I would say that we can take just as good, if not better. Like I said, we could take better notes. And that questions that we have can then be provided to you to answer those questions, which I think is a lot more efficient as far as that. So yes, you were invited to the meetings, but you are not requested to be there.
Just to be
I will
clear, those-
provide you the dates.
Those are your.
Yes, so council will have a series of public town hall meetings. We're looking at 3 meetings in April. Possibly one at the end of this month, but I will get the dates to you. And then we will be asking the public for comment on the actual plan, because the public has not been able to formally make comments on the proposal put forth by the mayor. And that's the reason why council wants to have these town halls, just because there was the series of town halls in the beginning. And being at those meetings, a large portion of what I heard from the public was, what are we talking about? You know, like, what are we asking questions on? You know, it felt like they had no guidance. It was just like a free fall. You know, I want to see a water park, and I want to see, I want to see a community building built, or, like, it was just very open-ended. And I suppose it produced some ideas and thought processes, but I feel like having those public comment opportunities once something's formed is even more invaluable than having open-ended town halls where people can, just give their dreams. Solicitor Grover, I believe you had a comment, unless,
I do actually, just a contextual of where we were and where we are. When this contract originally came forward in March of 2022, if everyone recalls, we had received about half the money that, and the other half was coming. There was some talk in Congress, even at that time, of clawing back the second half of the money for this other program they were going to pass. The US Treasury had not issued the full regulations at that point. And in that time, and we'd forwarded to you, I think, 2 different updates that they had provided, the Law Bureau forwarded to the administration and the council, where they gave more clarity to everybody about what you can and cannot do with the money. There has been a change in the statute by itself just in December of 2022, which they now call ARPA Flex, which took away some of the more stringent requirements. So it's sort of been a moving target. But from the Law Bureau's general point of view, the value of a consultant is on the reporting side to survive the audit. We've never had this much money, and it's still under what's called Title II, which means it has a clawback provision. So getting it right is where the value comes from, that the compliance with reporting, and not just programming, but reporting the program in a manner that's compliant with the federal government, is where the value of consultants come from. It is, I will note, the current consultant for DBHG altered the course we were on for having failed under that reporting requirement in the past. So there is value when it's done right and done well. And that, at the end of the day, protects the local taxpayers' money for the money they've paid in for their real estate and their business and other things. So that's just the context from our point of view. So to us, most of the work for consultants is yet to come under this thing. I don't think we knew that when the contract came in March of 2022. I think everyone was still feeling their way through at that time. So that's just from a perspective of us in terms of compliance, which is most of what our office does, is trying to facilitate compliance with the various obligations the city has to the state and federal government.
Thank you. And so this current contract would then cover that portion as well? Or would we do another contract?
This contract only goes to the end of the encumbrance period, which is December 31st, 2024. It aligns with that. Council has to vote on the programs that you have. I believe some of the documents from the departments have been forwarded to the council over time of what they were thinking. I just re-forwarded what I think I've re-forwarded, which is the DBHD documents. Those were the most comprehensive to come up with because affordable housing didn't really exist here. And there's been a lot of time and effort put into forming them. Under this ordinance, they will change into regulations, as will the tree program, as will others. So some things, as was said, are plainly eligible, and then some things are gray. And it's the gray ones that we have to be really careful about. And it has to be a certain efficacy and efficiency to the program that comes that we implement, because it has to be able to be done and done on time. Those are, I think, the operational questions for these monies, because we have right now under federal law, no leeway to when we can encumber and no leeway when we can be done. That may come, but we don't have it right now. So everything we do has to target to those dates.
All right. Before I open it back up for more questions from my colleagues, I have one question as far as billing. It's $200 an hour. Are you billing in solid hour blocks, or if I called you for a question and it was 15-minute conversation, is that $200 or?
If you call me for a question and it's a 15-minute conversation, it's a quarter of an hour.
All right, I'm just making
If
sure.
you call me for a question and it's a 6-minute question, it's $0. That's just the way it really works.
Okay. All right. Councilman Majors? Any other questions or comments from our colleagues regarding Resolution 28 of 2023? Councilwoman Daniels, looks like.
Yeah, this is not going to be helpful at all in our deliberations, but I think so much of this starts with the lack of communication throughout the delivery process, but also how the initial contract came, right? It came down to us. We were urged that we had to vote for it that day because we were under a deadline to whatever. And then it turned out that the only immediate service was creating the profile for Miss Kelly. So in some ways, maybe your company was harmed by that initial process, where we were told that we were going to be getting so much more right away. when in fact we were not, to begin with, like that was not the intent of the contract. And then we didn't get, once you started to be a service provider to us with the remainder of the contract. So, so I don't want us to forget that aspect of how the initial contract was brought to us. We were given very little time. It was brought the same, I think it was the same day to look at. And, you know, under incredible stress to accept this contract. So, so it's not a question or a comment that adds anything to our deliberative process for this renewal contract. But yeah, I think maybe in some ways the whole process has colored this whole relationship unfavorably.
Thank you for that.
That's just, yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilman Lawson.
And this is just for my clarification as I'm coming into the process a little late here, but it seems like part of our confusion came from what we as a city are asking of you versus what we believe the contract was about here. Because it sounds like we're really at this point mostly leaning on you for reporting and compliance as opposed to helping us develop the plan. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah, I think that's accurate at this point in time. In terms of developing the plan, the city has gone a long way to doing that themselves. You know, part of this contract is, as I said, if you get to the point in those programs that there needs to be additional capacity that we can add to you, that's what the contract is also.
Okay, thank you. That's just what I need for clarification so that I understood where we were coming from on this body versus what we're discussing here.
Thank you. President Bowers.
I just have one question. This would be for the administration. Other than Ms. Kelly, who is the primary point of contact within the mayor's office?
Or ARPA or just?
Or ARPA? Or who would be interfacing with NW Financial outside of Ms. Kelly?
Marita runs that directly. So Marita's the point person directly to the mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I thank you for being here tonight. I do appreciate your openness and conversing with us. I look forward to getting your contact information as well as the information that we requested tonight as far as some of the reports and things. And thank you again for being here. Once again, I'm going to ask that this remain in committee so that we can get the information and analyze it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
And I suppose that is everything for the Budget and Finance Committee. And I will be turning it back over to President Bowers.
Thank you very much. Okay, council members, at this time, we will open the floor for public comment. If anybody would like to offer public comment, just a few housekeeping rules, please state your name and your address. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your address, please share the vicinity in which you live. You have 2 minutes to share your comment, and Mr. Truesdale will serve as our timekeeper. Is there anyone to my right that would like to offer public comment? Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, anyone in the middle section? Seeing and hearing no one, anyone to my left? Seeing and hearing no one, council members, the time is 7:36 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.